faded jeans, and a worn baseball cap with no insignia. His shooting stance was old school, his grouping flawless. The younger shooters thought he was just some retired trucker burning ammo, until a Delta Force candidate spotted the tattoo on his forearm while reloading and froze. Not because it was flashy, but because it wasn't. It was a symbol you don't just ink, you earn it. And when the recruit asked where he served, the entire range went quiet, because the answer didn't come with words, just a number, a year, and suddenly, no one was laughing anymore. Welcome to the Human Stories. Before we begin this tale of silence, skill, and forgotten legends, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. If you believe stories like this need to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they are. The range opened at 7 a.m., but the old man was always there by 6:45. He never said much, signed a clipboard at the front desk with a slow, deliberate scrawl. Last name only, Hayes. No rank, no greetings, no, how you doing? Just a nod at a guy behind the counter. Then he walked the same quiet steps to lane 7, farthest in the building, away from the Bluetooth speakers and ego talk. He wore the same thing every time. Faded jeans, a tan flannel shirt rolled to the forearms, and a brown baseball cap that had once been blue. No patches, no slogans. The brim curled just enough to shade his eyes. His boots were worn but clean. He carried his range bag in his right hand, low and steady, and never brought more than he needed. Just a single pistol case, a box of .45s, and one battered thermos that never left his bench. The regulars called him Pops or the old guy, and half of them thought he was just another ex-trucker with a pension and too much time. They joked about how he only ever brought one target, and always left after 30 rounds. But the staff noticed something different. The way he moved, the way he checked his surroundings with quiet precision, the way his eyes lingered not on the paper silhouette downrange, but on the metal behind it, like he was judging wind speed that wasn't even there. He never flinched, never wasted a bullet, never picked up his brass. Most of the guys on the line didn't notice, but the ones who knew what to look for, they noticed. That morning, the range was busier than usual. A group of young Army soldiers had come in together, off duty, full of jokes, full of bravado. One of them, tall and lean with a crew cut and a trident pin on his gym bag, set up 2 lanes over from Hayes. His name was Eric. He was a Delta Force candidate on leave before selection training at Fort Bragg, confident, focused, and sharp enough to know what real looked like. At first, he didn't pay much attention, just another civilian plinking away next to him. But then he heard it, the rhythm, not the volume, not the recoil, the pattern. 3 shots, reset, 2 shots, reset, all tight, all deliberate, no wasted motion. Eric glanced sideways. The old man's grip was textbook, his stance pure. He wasn't reacting to the gun. He was controlling it. That's when Eric leaned a little and caught a glimpse of the man's forearm as he reloaded. It was faint, sun-faded, but unmistakable, a tattoo. Not a flag, not an anchor, not a skull, just a small triangle with a dagger and numbers. An insignia that Eric recognized immediately. He stiffened slightly, blinked, looked again. That wasn't ink from a shop. It was from a time when tattoos were earned, not designed. He waited a minute, watched the grouping on Hayes' target get tighter with each volley. Then, curiosity outweighing caution, he took a step sideways and spoke. "Excuse me, sir. That ink on your arm, that's Delta Force, isn't it?" The old man didn't turn, didn't smile, just emptied his mag with one final perfect shot, set the pistol down slowly, and finally looked Eric in the eye. His answer came without a smile. Once. Just once. That was it. But Eric knew what it meant. Eric stood still for a moment after the old man spoke. Once. It wasn't a dismissal. It was something heavier, like a door cracked open just wide enough to say, "Don't push it." So Eric didn't. Not yet. He simply nodded, stepped back to his lane, and resumed shooting, but not with the same rhythm, not with the same ease. His eyes kept drifting left, watching. Hayes took his time. He wasn't fast. He wasn't flashy. He was precise, measured. Every movement had the weight of memory behind it. When he reloaded, it wasn't with rush or flare, just calm efficiency. Mag in, slide check, fire. His grouping was tight, always was. And after each shot he'd pause, as if replaying the moment before it happened again. Eric's friends didn't notice. They were laughing, comparing groupings, making bets. One of them, a younger guy named Reeves, leaned over and chuckled. "Hey, that old guy is still doing okay, huh?" Eric didn't answer. He just kept watching, kept thinking, because he'd seen that kind of shooting before, but only from instructors. The kind that didn't need to shout to command attention. The kind you shut up for. 15 minutes later, Hayes finished his box of .45, 30 rounds, not one miss outside the inner circle. He set the pistol down, pulled a faded rag from his bag, and began cleaning it right there without hurry. Eric hesitated, then stepped over once more. "Sir," he said quietly, "if you don't mind me asking, when did you serve?" Hayes didn't answer at first. He set the rag down, locked the slide open, and looked at Eric, not irritated, not guarded, just calm. 90 to 04, he said. Delta, Middle East. Eric swallowed. That lined up exactly with what he thought. And the ink, that wasn't a tattoo you got for the bars. That was Delta Force. The tip of the spear. Black operations. The kind of deployments where names didn't go home, where files went missing on purpose. "You were in Iraq during storm?" Eric asked. Hayes gave a half nod. "Among other places." That's when the volume of the other lanes began to fade, not literally, but in feel, like the rest of the range had shrunk into a quiet corridor around Lane 7. Even the joking behind them softened. A few of the younger guys had picked up on Eric's body language. One or two started watching from a distance. "Did you ever train with the current Delta teams?" Eric asked. Hayes allowed himself the faintest smile. "We all did a little of everything back then. You adapted, you survived, or you didn't." Eric couldn't help but grin. "Sir, my CO told us about an op in 1991, deep desert recovery. The guy who led the exfil was wounded, but carried 2 men out under fire. They said it was classified for years." Hayes didn't blink. A lot of things were classified for years. And just like that, the door closed again, not harshly, just enough to remind Eric that some stories weren't told. They were carried, like rounds that hadn't been fired, like names that weren't written on medals. Hayes stood, stretched his back, and zipped his range bag. Eric stepped aside instinctively. A few of the other shooters looked over. Curious now, quiet now. Something about the way the young soldier moved told them the man leaving wasn't just anyone. As Hayes turned to go, Eric did something rare. He snapped to attention. No joke, no sarcasm, just respect. Hayes stopped mid-step, looked back. Eric spoke clearly. "Sir, thank you for your service. Truly." Hayes studied him for a moment, then walked back over slowly and placed something into Eric's hand. A coin, heavy, real. It bore the Delta Force insignia on one side and a single phrase on the other. "Still here." Then he leaned in, voice low. "You'll know when it's your time to go quiet. Until then, earn it." And then he walked away. No salute, no handshake, just a man disappearing into the morning sun, leaving behind a silence louder than any story he could have told. Hayes was gone before most of them even noticed. No goodbye, no nod, just picked up his bag, thermos tucked under one arm, and disappeared into the rising sun like the morning was done with him. Eric stood there for a long moment, the weight of the coin still in his palm, his brain spinning faster than his pulse. He'd seen men try to fake valor. He'd seen posers wearing stolen insignias and made-up patches. This was something else entirely. The coin wasn't decorative. It wasn't mass-produced. It was the kind that was never supposed to exist in the first place. "Yo, Eric." One of his buddies called from a few lanes down. "You good?" He didn't answer at first. Then he slowly turned and walked toward them, holding out the coin without a word. They crowded in around him, expecting a joke, another smart remark, but as soon as they saw the insignia, Delta, old school, Gulf War era, they went quiet. Dead quiet. Reeves muttered, "No way, that's real." Eric nodded. "It is." Another guy frowned. "Who gave it to you?" Eric's eyes scanned the empty lane Hayes had stood in. "The man you all ignored. The one you laughed at? That was Master Sergeant Thomas Hayes. None of them responded. They didn't need to. The silence in their throats said more than words could. Eric walked back to the front desk, holding the coin like a sacred object. The guy behind the counter was sipping coffee and scrolling his phone. He looked up casually. "Everything all right?" Eric placed the coin on the counter gently. "You know this man?" The clerk squinted. "That old guy from lane 7? Eric nodded. "Name's Hayes." "What's his first name?" The guy turned to his screen, tapped a few keys. "Let me check. T. Hayes. Signed up almost 8 years ago. Never missed a payment. No credit card, just cash. No email either. Old school all the way." He paused. "Whoa. Says here he marked, do not publish name for recognition events or honors. That's rare." Eric leaned in. "You know why?" The clerk shrugged. "Nah. Only thing he's ever said to me was once, when I thanked him for his service. He looked me dead in the eye and said, 'I didn't do it for you to thank me.'" The guy chuckled nervously. "I didn't bring it up again." Eric didn't laugh. He just looked down at the coin again. Then, without saying another word, he walked out of the building. That night, he couldn't let it go. He tried to sleep, couldn't. Around midnight, he booted up his laptop, dug into declassified archives, and began piecing it together. It took hours. Most names were redacted. Some dates were wrong on purpose. But eventually, in a buried JSOC log from 1991, it was there. One line. No ceremony, no headline, just M/SGD Thomas Hayes, Delta. Iraq, February 27th. Extraction under fire, recovered 5. Refused medevac. Wounded twice. Declined award recommendation. Buried note. Asset considered irreplaceable. Now silent. That word hit Eric like a punch. Silent. That was the mission back then. You did the job. You didn't talk. You didn't write books. You didn't tweet about your trauma. You carried it quietly, forever. And Hayes had, all the way to that plastic bench at the range, all the way to that last box of .45 ACP, all the way through decades of being just another old man in a flannel shirt. But now Eric knew. And so did the rest of them. The next time Hayes showed up at the range, everything was different. The following week, Hayes came back just like always. Same truck, same time, same quiet steps across the gravel lot. He nodded to the guy behind the counter, signed his name on the clipboard, and made his way to lane 7. His boots crunched softly beneath him, and in his hand the same old range bag, zippered halfway open with just one pistol inside. Same box of 30 rounds, same battered thermos tucked between his elbow and side. But this time, the air felt different. Eric was already there, early. Not just him, either. 3 of the guys from his team had arrived before sunrise and were waiting near the back bench. They didn't say a word when Hayes walked by. Didn't interrupt him. They simply stood a little straighter, gave him a nod, and watched with the kind of attention usually reserved for instructors, not old men in denim. Hayes sat up without a glance their way, pinned his target, adjusted his stance. But he noticed the silence. Not the absence of gunfire. There was still plenty. But the shift in tone. Less chatter, less swagger. A little more respect in the way lanes were cleared, a little more patience in the way mags were loaded. Halfway through a second string of fire, Eric stepped over. Not casual this time, but composed, controlled. He waited for Hayes to finish his group, then quietly held something out. It was a fresh ammo box, sealed .45 caliber. Hayes looked at it, then at Eric. No smile, just a question in his eyes. Eric simply said, "I figured 30 wasn't enough today." For the first time, Hayes gave a nod that lasted more than half a second. He accepted the box, reloaded calmly, and continued firing. Not a word, just a soft, unmistakable rhythm of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Later, after the brass had settled and the smell of gunpowder had thinned from the air, Hayes sat on the edge of the wooden bench, sipping from his thermos. One by one, the younger men passed him, not as a crowd, not in a line, but quietly, individually. A nod, a handshake, a simple sir. Nothing rehearsed, nothing forced. Reeves, the kid who had joked a week earlier, lingered a little longer than the others. He cleared his throat. "We looked you up. Some of us, you saved a lot of people. Hayes wiped the rim of his thermos with his sleeve. They saved each other, he said. Reeves opened his mouth to respond, then thought better of it. He just nodded and walked away. The last to remain was Eric. He sat beside Hayes on the bench, both men staring downrange at nothing in particular. They didn't speak for a while. Finally, Eric asked, "You ever think about teaching?" Hayes exhaled softly. "I spent 30 years trying to forget everything I'd teach. But some of us need to remember it." Hayes didn't respond right away. He took another sip. The sky had turned a deeper blue, the sunlight catching faint dust in the air. Finally, he turned slightly and said, "You don't teach this. You absorb it, quietly over time." Eric nodded. "That's why I'm still listening." Hayes looked at him longer this time, then stood up, then "Don't talk so much." They both chuckled quietly. Before leaving, Hayes left a fresh ammo box untouched on the bench, a small gesture, but it said everything. That afternoon, the range staff made a small change. A brass plate, no larger than a business card, was screwed into the wood above Lane 7. It didn't say Hero. It didn't say Legend. It didn't even say Delta. It just said, "Lane reserved until he says otherwise." Hayes never asked who put it there, and he never told him to take it down. Some men teach with words. Others teach by presence. Hayes never told war stories, never raised his voice, never asked for a thank you. He showed up, took 30 shots, and left more impact than most men who speak for hours. He never needed to prove anything. Not to the range, not to young guys beside him, not even to the generation who forgot to ask. But when one of them finally looked close enough to see the truth beneath his sleeve, the silence broke. That's the thing about real warriors. They don't advertise. They wait until someone is wise enough to notice the way they move, the way they stand, the way they don't need to be seen to matter. Hayes didn't need a biography, didn't need applause. All he needed was that one recruit who looked past the surface and asked the right question. And from that moment on, every round he fired taught more than any lecture could. So now I ask you, have you ever met someone like Hayes? A veteran who never bragged, never boasted, just stood quietly, carried history in his hands, and let time forget until someone remembered? Say their name in the comments. Share their story. Let others know who they were before the silence. Because at the Human Stories, we believe that the most powerful stories don't shout. They wait. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, subscribe, share, and help us keep these voices alive. We'll see you in the next one. And until then, if you ever see an old man at the range, reloading slow, standing alone, respect that silence. It might just be speaking volumes.